Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm Ron Mackenzie Lafergie. In 1971, a man who would become known as D.B. Cooper committed one of the most infamous plane hijackings or skyjackings of all time, getting away with $200,000. His crime and subsequent evasion of capture caused him to be something of a celebrity. He's since been immortalized in book, film, and song, but what actually came of him? Let's explore. If you want more videos like this one, check out our biggest debated topics playlist on the channel. Now get ready, it's time to ask the question, what happened to D.B. Cooper? Well, first of all, I'll give a brief description of the incident for the uninitiated. It should be noted that the name given by the man was in fact Dan Cooper rather than D.B. Cooper, which was a mistake by the media that stuck. However, since that's the name most know him as, I'll continue to use the name D.B. Cooper for clarity. Okay, so on November 24th, 1971, Cooper hijacked a passenger plane, informing the flight crew that he had a bomb. He ordered the plane to be landed and demanded $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and food for the crew in exchange for the safe return of the passengers. The FBI gave him the money, documenting the numbers on the bills in hopes of tracking him later, and the passengers and flight attendants were released. The plane took off once again, flying towards Mexico City at speed and altitude determined by Cooper, manned by the pilot, co-pilot, flight engineer, and 1 flight attendant. Mid-flight, Cooper strapped the money to himself and leapt out of the plane with his parachute, leaving only his tie. The FBI and Army searched the area in which he was believed to have landed, but to no avail. This case went on to gain great fame across the United States, leading to several copycat skyjackings and even inspiring festivals and museums dedicated to him. So now that we know the story of D.B. Cooper, it's time to jump into the recently ended investigation. There have been a number of discoveries in the years following the hijacking. In 1978, instructions for the lowering of the aft stairs of a 727 was found within the plane's flight path. Then, in 1980, 9 years after the hijacking, a young boy named Brian Ingram found 3 bundles of largely disintegrated cash buried a few inches underground. They were found just north of Portland and totaled $5,800. When the serial numbers were compared to those of the money given to Cooper, it was determined that this money had indeed belonged to him. An Army Corps of Engineers hydrologist deemed it likely that these were buried by the motion of the river, leading many to believe Cooper had crashed and died on landing. There have also been discoveries of materials believed to be from Cooper's parachute, but further investigation into these cases found that they likely had no connection to Cooper. There were also DNA samples taken from his tie, however, there is no evidence that they belong to Cooper himself. One recent finding is believed by some to suggest that the FBI may have covered up some aspects of this event. A letter was released on court order in 2017 after the FBI refused to release it to the public for some time. This letter, supposedly sent by Cooper himself, tells of how he knew he wouldn't be caught since he used a toupee and facial putty to change his features. It also says that he had been on several airplanes since without incident, and that he had committed the hijacking for a thrill since he only had 14 months to live. Some believe this letter to be proof of an FBI cover-up, although it seems more probable that this letter, like a number of others, was withheld due to the likelihood that it was fake. It certainly makes sense that the authorities would be reluctant to add even more fuel to the D.B. Cooper fire. Sadly, there isn't much we know about Cooper, but there are certain educated guesses that can be made. Due to the knowledge he showed of aircraft and airports, it's believed that he may have been an Air Force veteran. However, it's also believed that Cooper didn't have much experience skydiving due to the choices he made with regards to the parachutes. Furthermore, the name Dan Cooper seems to be a reference to a famous comic book hero of the same name, who often parachuted for the Royal Canadian Air Force, meaning the real Cooper likely had an interest in the character. This could explain why he would attempt it with so little experience. These scant few details, as well as physical descriptions given by the flight attendants, are the main source of evidence used to try to identify the real Cooper. There have been a number of men believed to be D.B. Cooper over the years, and while most have been ruled out, some have rather compelling evidence supporting them. For example, in 2011, Marla Cooper of Oklahoma City spoke out claiming that her uncle, Lynn Doyle Cooper, was the real D.B. Cooper. LD was raised in a small town in Oregon, near where Cooper would have landed. Her uncle also had a particular interest in the comic book character Dan Cooper. Marla claims that he had returned soon after the hijacking, sporting injuries, and later went into hiding. Unfortunately, we'll never know for sure if this truly was the famous D.B. Cooper, particularly since this is based on the word of one person who may have simply been in search of fame. However, as I hinted at earlier, many believe that Cooper didn't go on to do anything at all, merely died on impact. This was among the prime speculations of the FBI early on in the case, and remains likely to this day. This is supported by the fact that one parachute he used was actually a dummy parachute that was sewn shut. According to Special Agent Larry Carr, even if he did get his chute open, it would have been difficult to land and find his way to safety, particularly since the good parachute he had on him was an older model incapable of steering. This is further compounded by the belief that Cooper was relatively inexperienced in skydiving. Sadly, with the case now closed, it seems unlikely that we will have closure on this story. However, since a Portland grand jury returned an indictment in absentia against Cooper for violating the Hobbs Act, statute of limitations will not affect his case, and he could potentially be prosecuted in the future. And now we return to our question, what happened to D.B. Cooper? Well, unfortunately, this case remains unsolved. There are a number of theories, but since none of them have been conclusively proven, I'll leave it up to you to decide what to believe. If this interests you, I'd suggest, as always, looking looking into it further on your own. And who knows, maybe you'll be the one to finally crack the case. Thank you for watching Life's Biggest Questions. I hope this was interesting and informative, and as I said, maybe even inspired you to look into it further on your own. If you like this video, please thumbs up and subscribe to the channel down below. While you're down there, let me know what you think happened to D.B. Cooper. Until next time, I'm Ron McKenzie LaFergie with Life's Biggest Questions, wishing you the best of luck on your quest for answers.